The train rumbles through the night. It's not going very fast because other trains keep being diverted onto our track. They are bringing supplies to the front, so things there keep going. The land is so fast that's unbelievable if one hasn't seen it for oneself. I got further up to the vicinity of Kharkiv. Here, the railway has been interrupted. It's said that partisans had supposedly blown up the bridge across the river here. That's all I need to know. That way, I'll never get to Vostok. I register with a local command post and inquire how I might be able to travel on. I still have a considerable way ahead of me, but I'm having all this documented so later no one can claim that I'd dawdled or so. Then, as I'm sitting somewhat dispirited in front of the building and contemplate how it should go further, a Horch car comes to a halt right in front of my nose. A master sergeant of the Air Force gets out. He's carrying his right arm in a sling. I stand up and salute properly. The master sergeant returns the salute with his left, as there was no other way. I sit down again and await whether I might be able to catch another ride for me here. After 15 minutes, the master sergeant comes back out and looks at me. I'm not quite sure what he's up to, but then the smile does look familiar to me. It's a school friend of my former Commander Hansen. I get it. Master Sergeant Flotzek. His Me-109 has gotten us out of a big mess back then in Kharkiv. He apparently can't get enough in this corner of the woods. We shake hands and he takes me along to some quarters where the Air Force soldiers are coming and going. We get a hot coffee and then I have to tell what had happened on Hill 301 back then. It's not easy for me, but I report exactly how I had fared and also what my comrades had told me. Deep in thought, Master Sergeant Flotzek looks into the void. Then he murmurs, "Defected? I don't believe that. Either he's a prisoner of war or has fallen, but to the Ruski, never." We still talk quite a lot about Hansen and about what had happened at the front in the last months. My battle injury, the wedding, and my attempt to get home. He drops all formalities and calls me Rudolf. However, I can't just address a master sergeant by first name, and therefore I maneuver around that cliff deftly. Of course, he notices, but does not say anything about it. After 30 minutes, he inquires as to where I actually have to go. My answer is that I am supposed to go to Vostok, but here in front of Kharkiv, there's currently no going further by railroad. That, too, we will manage, he remarks. Together we climb into the Horch, which takes him a bit longer with his bomb wing. I ask about the injury, and he laughs out loud. I'd fallen down, drunk as a tank after a really nice evening with the frontline theater. Awesome troop, just don't tell. Everyone's thinking that I'm really wounded, he still remarks. A bottle of port for the staff physician, and I had my peace and quiet. That's how it's done. After an hour, we're at a forward airfield which is full of transport airplanes. A few fighter planes are also present, but those don't seem to be taking off. The master sergeant says I should wait, he'd be right back. It doesn't take long till he's back to the vehicle and lets me know that in 2 hours the Junkers 52 would be flying into the vicinity of Mostock. I could catch a flight. He had just cleared that with the crew. With a laugh, he yells at me that I wanted to do that anyway. Since there's no room for two in a fighter plane, I'd have to take the flying bus, he jokes. I'm flabbergasted. That's something for a change. Hopefully they won't drop out of the sky as I'm sitting inside there. Hansen's school buddies bides me farewell and adds that when I was near his squadron again, I should stop by for a sip of aviator's water. Politely, I express my gratitude once more. Then I'm standing in front of the staff barracks of the transport squadron. The door swings open, and a cheerful corporal with a strong Berlin accent approaches me joyfully. "That's you, right? The tank ace from the Terek flying along," he remarks toward me. With these words, it's off to the plane and we climb on board. Take off in 20 minutes. Whoever got to hit the bushes, now would be the time. He makes me understand. Later, I've made myself comfortable among mailbags, rations, and medical supplies. Where my parachute was located, I asked the Berliner. "This bird ain't gonna crash, you better believe that." "Well, then I guess I don't need a parachute." The rest of the crew comes on board, the engines are warming up. I'm still a bit anxious, but also curious how flying might be. It gets incredibly noisy, and it's looking badly with communication. We take off. The Junkers 52 zips down the runway. I feel how the tail slowly lifts up. Then the rumbling stops, we are climbing into the sky. It's a great feeling to be inside here. We perform a few circles above the airfield until all planes are airborne. At last, 2 fighter planes take off, and then it's going in the direction of Terek. I look out the window and can recognize many details on the ground. Even where the heavy fighting had taken place is easy to guess by the craters and wreckage. I only hope that no Russian planes or anti-aircraft will spit into our soup. At some point, I must have dozed off, and I'm only awakened later by the rocking of the plane. That's certainly not normal. I try to look out of the airplane. It's difficult because I'm being tossed back and forth. Now I do recognize the problem. 4 Russian fighters are engaging us. 2 are going after the Me-109, 2 after us. The 5 Junkers 52 are going down into low-level flight, and in that way are luring the fighters into firing range of the ground troops. Nevertheless, we have to keep waving back and forth since the little buggers are sticking to us like crazy. The anti-aircraft batteries have apparently paid attention because I can just spot 1 Russian fighter plane impact on the ground. Every once in a while I can see our fighter escort, who are engaged in a wild curving pursuit with the other Russians. After a short while, we climb again. The Berliner comes over to me and yells in my ear, "All 4 eliminated, those guys just can't do it." After some time, we land. I'm really glad to be back on solid ground. I say goodbye to the airmen and give a verbal invitation to stop by our regiment. I'm sure I could get something organized there. It's already evening. For now, I can't get any further. It's another 50 kilometers to Mostock. I'm being sent into the quarters of a few armored reconnaissance men. There, I receive a heartfelt welcome. I toss a few culinary treats out of my backpack onto the table, and it turns into a jolly evening with the comrades. The armored reconnaissance men are getting their 6-wheel and 8-wheel scout cars ready and want to know whether I'd like to ride along for a bit. It's not quite going all the way to Mozdok, but into the vicinity they were indeed traveling. Of course I'm in. We swiftly drive across the main supply road. The vehicles are underway with speed, but for me this would be too little armor between myself and the Russians. An hour later, we arrive at a large field artillery emplacement, and I bid the comrades farewell. From here I'm sure I can travel further. It doesn't take long, and I locate a truck which is actually driving toward Mozdok. I have to ride in the back because 3 men are already sitting inside the cab. We rumble over muddy trails. I'm really being shaken through and through. I snatch something to eat out of my backpack and look at pictures of my Gudrun. My wife Gudrun. How that sounds, my wife. When we arrive in Mozdok, I look for my unit and ask around. It's looking rather hectic here. Everyone's running around and stowing things or loading vehicles. I stop a non-commissioned officer and inquire what's going on. The Ivan is going on. He's broken through and pushing against our lines. The staff and supply units are relocating back and the front is straightened out. Everything south of the Terek is supposed to go back and wait for what the rats are really up to. Nice mess, he remarks further. That doesn't sound good. I report back to the Sarge and hand over my papers. Well wishes are expressed, and Schmidt quickly pours a schnapps for the 3 of us. Zap and down it goes. I ask what was new except for the Russians causing trouble and wanting to push us out of the way. In short, brief sentences, I am told that the losses in the last 14 days had been quite high. The Russian was throwing vast amounts of tanks and airplanes against our frontline sectors. He had short supply routes, we don't. That does not sound good. I am to wait until the platoon leader returns. Then I'd learn what would happen to me. Until then, we'll have another schnapps. At least, that helps.